Well, the football season is officially over after Super Bowl 60 last night. Going to talk about the big game and some Eagles news as well, of course, as you're locked into Eagles' latest on Fan Arch. What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Cory Nidoh. Hope you enjoyed the game last night, wherever you were watching it. Kind of a snooze fest for the majority of the game, especially if you're looking for offense. That game was certainly not what you were looking for then, because it was dominated by the defenses, specifically the Seattle Seahawks. And man, they were no joke last night, and they proved why they were one of the best defenses all season long. They helped Seattle win their second Super Bowl in franchise history, a 29-13 win over the New England Patriots. They had Drake May struggling real bad all game long, and they were able to do what the Eagles did to the Chiefs last year, and that was get home to the quarterback with just four-man pressures. They matched the Eagles' Super Bowl mark of 6 sacks. The record still remains at 7, but the Seattle Seahawks dominated New England in every facet of the game. There was a point where it looked like the Patriots might be the first team ever to be shut out in a Super Bowl, but obviously Drake May and the Patriots were able to find the end zone twice at the end of that game to avoid that. But my initial thoughts are Seattle's for real. I mean, they have a really good nucleus. They did it with a quiet game from JSN, who missed the bulk of the third quarter because he was being tested for a concussion. So now you're looking at what this means for the NFC moving forward, and there's already way too early odds of who will win the Super Bowl next year out of the NFC and AFC. The Seahawks are the favorite at plus 900. The Bills are second at plus 1100. And then the Eagles are tied for third at plus 1300 with the Patriots and the Ravens. So the Eagles, according to bookmakers, as it stands right now, are tied for the third highest favorites to win the Super Bowl in 2026, 2027. That will be Super Bowl 61. So obviously, the Eagles have a lot to discuss. They have a lot of changes happening. We really did a deep dive into a lot of their changes last week. We expect to see more this week and in the near future as well, just because of everything going on. But if you look at the quarterback play of Drake May and even Sam Darnold, they were not impressive. And I know everybody loves to compare quarterbacks, right? And this episode's not going to be my quarterback ranking list. We have all offseason to talk about that. But man, I don't know what stirs the pot more, what generates more buzz than comparing Jalen Hurts to other quarterbacks when you talk about QBs in the NFL. Drake May and Sam Darnold combined for more incompletions last night than Jalen Hurts had in 2 Super Bowls combined. Now, again, I think Jalen Hurts is better than Sam Darnold and Drake May. Drake May had a really good year, also played the easiest schedule in the NFL. He was able to gut and claw and scratch his way through the playoffs, facing really good defenses all throughout the season, all on the road. I don't take that away from him. But he struggled last night in the biggest game, and that's just something that Jalen Hurts has not done so far when it comes to playing in the Super Bowl. Obviously, he was a Super Bowl MVP, and that is something that, you can't take away from Jalen Hurts. And now it kind of showed just how impressive Hurts has been in those 2 Super Bowls. He should have won the first one, honestly. It basically came down to who had the ball last. Pat Mahomes and Kansas City had it, and obviously we know how that game ended with that pass interference call. But you look at the combined stats in the 2 Super Bowls for Jalen Hurts: 525 passing yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, rushing yards 142, including 70 in that loss to Kansas City, which set a record for the most rushing yards by a quarterback, and he had 4 rushing touchdowns total with a passer rating of 109.4. So those are really, really good numbers. So I get it. Jalen Hurts didn't have a great year this season. He didn't have a terrible year, but he also was okay. He was average. He could have done more, absolutely. But if we're comparing quarterbacks, sometimes you got to look at what they've done in the biggest moments. And all I'm saying here today is that Jalen Hurts has delivered for the Philadelphia Eagles in their two biggest games with him as a quarterback. So we'll see what happens with this offense. We talked about the changes. We talked about maybe what to expect from Sean Mannion, Josh Grizzard. They've got a couple of new guys coming in. I'm sure there's going to be more coming in as well. And Nick Sirianni and the Eagles offense, it certainly looks like they are going to make some changes moving forward. Speaking of changes, one of the big question marks in this offseason is A.J. Brown going to be traded? Is A.J. Brown happy in Philadelphia? And if you've tuned into any of the shows here on Fan Arch on Eagles Latest, you would hear me say, I do not think the Eagles should trade A.J. Brown. I don't think they will trade him unless he comes out and says, I don't want to be here. That is the only way I could see the Eagles willing to move A.J. Brown. And he went on the Micah Parsons podcast over the weekend, and guess what? He seemed like he was pretty content. He stepped away from the situation in Philly. It was frustrating. It wasn't ideal. But go back and listen to what he said. He said he's always excited. He said sometimes change isn't a bad thing. He said he's got the utmost respect for Kevin Patullo, and he has a great heart, but he's excited for the season, and he's excited for what's to come. Now, I know people can read that, hear it, and say, oh, well, he's just alluding to change in terms of he's going to be on a new team, and he's going to be elsewhere, and that's what he's talking about with the change. However, Parsons asked Brown about getting traded to Philadelphia back in 2022, and he had nothing negative to say about his 4 years with the Eagles. He goes on and says, when I got to Philly welcomed me with open arms. That's home, man, and I love them. I love the support. I love the accountability. I love everything else they do, but I love it. Philly is Philly. You have to be there to understand it. To me, I saw his facial expressions. I watched the podcast. To me, that doesn't sound like a guy who wants to leave Philadelphia. Now, maybe I'm wrong. But there are a lot of reports, and now some of these national reporters are kind of swaying back and saying, oh, well, I was part of the speculation, but really there's no indication that he actually does want to be traded. Now, conversations might be picking up in the next couple of weeks as we hit different milestones in the NFL offseason. But you trade A.J. Brown, you have to find a wide receiver that can come up with that production. A perennial 1,000-yard receiver. A perennial target that can find the end zone anytime he touches the ball. Did he have a down year this season? Absolutely. But his down year was still better than a lot of solid wide receivers in the league. He still had over 1,000 yards receiving. He had the 18th most in the league, and that was a down year. He was still a top 20 wide receiver in terms of yards. Did he have terrible drops in the playoffs in the wild card game? Absolutely. Is the drama annoying? Is it frustrating? For sure. I know people are calling him out saying, oh, he has no accountability. He's not talking to the media. To me, he doesn't need to talk to the media. Yeah, his teammates are wearing it and have to answer questions about him, and that's not ideal. That's not fair. But this guy says stuff, and every time he says something, it gets twisted. It gets turned into a bigger deal than it is. And I don't blame him for not talking to the media for the last couple months of the season. Because it just continued to stir the pot. It continued to build drama, even if there was nothing to be taken out of context. And A.J. Brown on that podcast, go back and watch it on the Micah Parsons podcast. He sounded pretty content with being in Philadelphia. Pretty content, pretty excited the changes that they're making at the offensive side of the football. Maybe he was just frustrated. He turned out to be a villain because he called out the offense saying, we can't flip a switch on come playoffs. Guess what? He was 100% spot on. You don't have to like that he's calling for the ball or he wants the ball more. But if I'm paying a wide receiver the money that A.J. Brown is getting, north of $20 million a year, I would want him to get the ball too. Kind of makes sense. You're putting in a lot of money. You want an ROI. You want a return on your investment. Not getting A.J. Brown the ball isn't the most productive way to get an investment on the money that you're spending. So, again, I've said it multiple times on this podcast. I'm going to say it again. I do not think A.J. Brown will be traded unless something completely crazy happens and he just says, hey, I don't want it. Jalen Hurts said after the season that he and A.J. Brown are in a good spot. Jalen Hurts is very calculated with every single word that comes out of his mouth. I think that they will have A.J. Brown for at least the 2026 season. Now, if it's the same story, if it's still frustrating, if he's not happy, well then okay, now the ship probably has set its course. It was a good 5-year run. Thanks for your service. Thanks for winning a Super Bowl with us, and you guys cut ties. But I just think A.J. Brown will be a Philadelphia Eagle next season. I do. So that will do it for this episode of Eagles Latest. The Super Bowl, kind of boring. What do you think? You think the Seahawks are the team to beat next year? Clint Kubiak seems like all signs are pointing he is going to be the Raiders head coach. Will they be able to replace Kubiak and his offensive genius? We'll see what happens. Can Sam Darnold repeat his success that he had throughout the regular season? Didn't have a great game in the big game yesterday, but he did enough to win the game and at least get them points on the board, and he didn't turn the ball over, which was key. But the Eagles, they look like they're going to be right in the mix, even though there's a lot of question marks right now surrounding the team, according to bookmakers. Obviously, that can change one way or another, but the Eagles do have a chance to still get back into this, even with all the uncertainty, even with some of the surprising moves that they have made so far this season. So as always, please drop a like, drop a comment, but most importantly, please hit that subscribe button below. Certainly helps the channel grow, and let us know what you think. What did you think about the Super Bowl? Do you think the Seahawks are way ahead of the Eagles moving forward? Do you think the Eagles are the second best team, the third best team in the NFC? Do you think A.J. Brown will be dealt this offseason? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks so much for tuning in to Eagles Latest, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.